Hello everyone, welcome to yet another week in the Clown Decade, in which the priorities of the British government are yet again all over the bloody place. Because ignoring all the stuff going on in the UK, such as COVID passports and forced inoculation of care home staff, there are other things going on in the UK that are just absolutely crazy, but I'm fed up of COVID. So we're going to be touching on other subjects, such as this one. Channel migrants crossing into Britain hit new record, and Priti Patel is criticised as 280 sail over in a day. So that's just one day. And if these trends continue, there is going to be nothing but illegal immigrants. So, the number of illegal immigrants crossing the channel into Britain passed the annual record yesterday, and we're not even into August, as Priti Patel came under fire for failing to stem a steep rise in people making the journey. The Home Office said that 287 migrants reached the UK in 12 boats, taking this year's total to 8,474, according to a Times running tally. It means the number of people who have made the crossing in 2021 is already higher than last year's record-breaking 8,420 crossings, with more than 5 months to go. Crazy. Absolutely crazy. And I remember making a video like this last year, where it made it to like 4,000 by August or something. I just said, if these trends continue, it'll be double 4,000. And it made it to 8,000. So these trends continue, 16,000. Are we going to let this continue? Are we going to, Priti Patel? Well, we'll see what plans they have, I suppose. Almost 1,000 have made the 21-mile journey in the past 3 days as smugglers took advantage of the good weather. Thousands more are expected over the next 2 months. Oh, well, what are you going to do about it, Priti? Well, last night, Patel, the Home Secretary, struck a deal with her French counterpart to pay a further £54 million to increase patrols of beaches in northern France and for new equipment to detect smugglers. The deal will double the number of French police patrolling the 100-mile coastline to 200 officers. Crazy. Absolutely insane idea. Because, for a start, why are we paying the French to patrol our water border? Why the hell are we doing that? And number two, why the hell would the French Border Patrol care if illegal migrants are leaving their country? Why not pay our own Border Patrol sector to have an increase in patrolling the waters to stop migrants coming in? And why don't we have patrols on the beaches to say, when they come on, okay, you're under arrest or whatever? I can't see this reducing the number of migrants that cross. All this might mean is that the French get a hell of a lot more money from bribes. Because please someone explain to me why the French would care if migrants are leaving their country to come to Britain. And amazingly, I'm not the only person to think this. Conservative MPs and campaigners lashed out at Patel for throwing good money after bad solutions. They pointed out that a £28 million deal with the French last November to double patrols had failed to prevent an increase in the crossings. The MP for Calais today said that the Home Office's £54 million payment to France is pointless because migrants will find somewhere else to cross. Well, he's not wrong, is he? And as I say, why is it not a huge win for the French Home Office if they're saying, look, we're getting rid of a load of migrants? That seems to be a very popular movement in France at the moment. Speaking to Radio 4's Today programme, Pierre-Henri Dumont, who is the MP for Calais, said, the fact is, having more money, having more police, having more controls will not prevent more crossing attempts. We have too many kilometres of shore to monitor. They can hide in a lot of places. There are a lot of roads, woods and trees. So even if you're monitoring 100 PC of a small or large part of the French coast, the smugglers will find somewhere to cross somewhere else. If it's not Calais, they will go to Normandy, and if it's not Normandy, then Belgium, or the Netherlands, etc, etc. Yeah, it's a good point, and this kind of brings it back to my point. Why not pay our own border patrols, who, when they come to the beaches, we will see them, because clearly people know where they're going to. Camera crews are constantly on them. You see videos of it all the time. Here's one that Nigel Farage posted, for God's sake. People clearly know where these people are coming into Britain. So patrol the bloody hotspots, and yeah, sure, they'll find new hotspots then. Fine, you can move as well. It's crazy. I mean, look at these clips. Because, you know, as soon as that boat landed, everyone is off. They're scattering. They're going everywhere. What would be the issue with putting armed guards or something on these beaches patrolling them while we have this crisis going on? And I don't blame these people who are filming it and taking pictures, because what are they supposed to do? Dozens ran off that boat. Literally dozens. And where are they going to go now? Oh, they're going to go to some 4-star hotel provided by the British taxpayer. They're going to go to some disused army barracks and burn it down. because some other migrants got 4-star hotels and not the army barracks, which are terrible compared to it. These people literally throw away all their identity cards, anything to identify them, so the British government have no choice but to house them. Surely there is a better solution to this than just throw money at the French. That is the last person I want British taxpayer money going to. I mean, for God's sake, we basically had the MP for Calais saying, "Why the hell are you giving us money?" A politician is literally questioning why we are giving them money. The idea is that stupid. So if that wasn't bad enough, Priti Patel had a column in today's Times with the title, "Online or on the bus, women and girls must be safe." Because apparently women aren't safe online or something. So then she starts the article by saying the safety of everyone in our country, wherever they are, is my priority. It is a terrible thing not to feel safe on the street, on the bus, at school, at work, online, or in your home. Too many people have this experience too often, especially women and girls. So, well, the safety of everyone in this country is priority. Women and girls first, though, please. Great. We often say these things have no place in our society. It would be more accurate to say that they should have no place, because they are still all too prevalent. They illustrate appalling, often outdated attitudes and prejudice towards women and girls. Please do expand on this. Good progress has been made in tackling these crimes. What crimes? We have no idea what crimes you're on about at this point. While the Prime Minister was Mayor of London, he ensured our capital became the first major city in the world to launch a comprehensive strategy to combat violence against women and girls. Right, okay. So, we've been tackling crimes that are already crimes, and things have got better. Right, lovely. Awesome. Since he has been Prime Minister, cross-government funding for action to tackle violence against women and girls has had more than trebled in relation to any other 2-year period. The United Kingdom's second female Prime Minister, Theresa May, led internationally renowned work on new offences for controlling and coercive behaviour, stalking, female genital mutilation and so-called revenge porn. This year, the landmark Domestic Abuse Act was passed. Right, so Tories are doing things for women and girls. Right, that's great. It turns out that Theresa May has put in new offences for tackling all this stuff you're talking about, so what's the issue here? Yeah, there is still much more to do. That's why today I'm publishing a new strategy to tackle violence against women and girls to mark the start of renewed and better focused efforts. Better focused on what? That seemed to cover pretty much everything. What's missing, I wonder? It has been shaped by the public. The horrendous case of Sarah Everard triggered a national conversation about these issues. So, a freak murder of a woman by a police officer sparks a national conversation about violence against women. Yeah, I can understand that, that's fine. But I'm really confused about what more you're actually going to do about this. I mean, what steps did you take? I reopened the government's call for evidence, which had already had 20,000 responses. We received a further 160,000 within a fortnight. Many people talked about immensely painful experiences for the first time. Their testimonies were very upsetting, but also incredibly courageous and helpful. They provided powerful evidence of the need to support victims and do more to prevent these crimes. Right, awesome. I'm still not sure how this comes to keeping women safe on the bus and online, whatever that means. So the strategy includes immediate practical steps to increase safety and longer-term action to bring about a permanent change in society. So this now sounds like social engineering, which I don't know. The back of my head just goes, but there's going to be hate speech laws online, but they're constantly talking about real-life abuse from the sounds of it. Which, from the looks of the Sarah Everard case, they seem to be taken seriously, and they seem to be bringing justice to the police officer that killed her. So what, do we want pre-crime action? Because if you've seen Minority Report, that can go very badly. So far I've not really had much to complain about in this article. It just seems to be the title at the moment, so I really want to see where this online space really comes into it, because this whole section is fine. It just goes on about initiatives that Priti Patel is either starting or continuing to support that seem like decent ideas, assuming they're implemented correctly. For example, commitments to review options to limit the use of non-disclosure agreements in case of sexual harassment in higher education so abusers can't hide. As long as it's done after they've been convicted, sure, I'm all for that. I don't see why criminals should have anonymity. There's also a new online tool called Safe Street where people can anonymously pinpoint locations where they feel unsafe and why. That seems genuinely fine to me. And the information will be used by police and crime commissioners to work with the local authorities and other stakeholders to improve the community safety. Now, the issue with that is that Non-crime hate incidents are constantly reported all the time for things that they really shouldn't be reported for. And I get the feeling that Street Safe is going to exacerbate that. And there's also going to be more money and support for helplines such as Safety for Women in the Night, a revenge porn helpline and things like that. And there's going to be a new 24/7 rape and sexual assault helpline. No problems really with any of that. Though I'm sincerely hoping that men will get the support they need as well, because obviously this is all focusing on women and girls, because everything we're doing these days is focusing on women and girls. But then this last paragraph really puts worry into me. We are taking action on street harassment. It is not acceptable that women and girls do not feel safe in our streets as a result of this behaviour. It's really airy-fairy words that don't really mean anything. You know, you don't feel safe on the street. What does that exactly mean? Because to a normal person, obviously, if you get attacked on the street, you won't feel safe on the street anymore. But you can also get PTSD from that, so you can not feel safe on the street just in general as well. It's basically up to an individual whether or not they feel safe on the street, and I understand trying to minimise risk on the street and trying to make people feel as safe as possible on the street. But the problem is that people cannot feel safe for whatever reason there is. And ultimately, if you try and get pathologically on the side of let's make our streets as safe as possible, well, basically no person ever is going to be allowed on the street. And this unironically can be used to justify the whole men aren't allowed outside in the streets after 6 PM or whatever it was that Mark Drakeford unironically said he would consider. But as I say, most of these ideas are okay from Priti Patel, it's just I don't think they're going to be implemented very well. Especially while non-crime hate incidences are still a thing. And near the end of this article is where things really go off the rails. So while there is not at present a specific offence of street harassment, there are a number of offences that do capture the behaviour raised in our call for evidence. Okay, what's the issue then? Yet I'm committed to ensuring not only that the laws are there, but that they work in practice and women and girls are confident that their concerns will be taken seriously. It is important that the police enforce the law and give women the confidence that if they report an incident, it will be dealt with. That is why our new multi-million-pound national communications campaign will challenge this kind of behaviour and ensure victims know how and where to report it. And what exactly do you mean by street harassment? Because, again, the rest of this section doesn't really explain it, so we will ensure that police and prosecutors are confident about how to respond to public sexual harassment with new guidance. Right, sexual harassment is a completely different thing, because when a lot of people say harassment, they do tend to include wolf whistling. And in order to prevent this from happening in the first place, we will deepen our understanding of who commits these crimes, why they do so, and how it may escalate. But we will continue to look carefully at where there may be gaps in existing law and how a specific offence for public sexual harassment could address those. Yeah, okay, we're not sure what you mean by sexual harassment. Will it include wolf whistling? Will it involve complimenting a woman on the street? Who knows? But then it goes way up to 100, and the vile, barbaric practice of virginity testing is going to be criminalised. Well, thank God for that, because it's essentially rape. And then the last two paragraphs are just a load of virtue signalling nowhere should be off limits to women and girls. That means there can't be men-only spaces. Boo! So really, when it came down to it, that should basically have a completely different title. Because there was literally nothing in that article about online spaces, but we will get to that soon. Because while it sounded like what Priti Patel was saying was completely agreeable generally, and the rest of it seemed like virtue signalling, when you actually go into specifics, it really doesn't seem that much better. So, harassing women in the street to be a crime under Patel plans. But the thing is, she mentioned that most street harassment comes under criminal acts anyway. So what was the issue? So, street harassment such as wolf whistling could become a specific crime under government plans to protect women and girls. I mean, honestly, we're literally at a point where women and girls have to be so mollycoddled that they can't even have what is essentially a very forward comment from men. And in my experience with women, they'll either do something to avoid even trying to get their attention. So I know some women basically put headphones on to like signal that they want to be ignored, basically. And others actually go around liking it. And there's always those famous articles from The Guardian where the woman wrote in her late 20s that she hates wolf whistling, and then in her early 30s wrote that she missed it. So why the hell are we making something a crime that, quite frankly, some women do like? And I myself have seen my own women friends actually being flattered by it on the street. And for God's sake, who's going to take a crime against wolf whistling seriously, for God's sake? This is a ridiculous, overreaching law yet again, because a bunch of women complained about it directly to the government. Anyway, Priti Patel, the Home Secretary, has pledged to consider the case for a new offence to capture incidents such as when men target women with sexually graphic or lewd comments in the street. Jesus, honestly. The move is designed to boost women's confidence to report sexual harassment in public places to the police after a government call for evidence consultation found that the majority of women and girls did not feel safe on the streets. Do you see what I mean? Literally, women and girls, I don't feel safe on the streets. Why? Because men talk to me and want my attention. Unbelievable scenes. And this isn't even me being desperate to wolf whistle. I've never done it in my life. And I don't think I ever will do it in my life. Because it's just not the type of thing I do. But I'm not going to say I don't care or no men who do it are disgusting. Because I don't think it is. I think it is quite literally just a harmless bit of fun. And as I say, it's a complete gamble of whether the woman likes it or not. You can't possibly know. It's literally a random woman. But we're going to make it a crime because of that risk? Really? Thanks, Priti Patel. This is completely pointless. While grooming gangs are still going on and we still have a load of illegal migrants coming over. Love it. This is exactly where we need the police to be. But at least there's more sensible stuff in this legislation, because apparently universities and colleges will face new limits on their use of non-disclosure agreements used to stop students speaking out about sexual assault on campus. Research has shown that a third of universities have used gagging clauses in relation to student complaints. Non-disclosure agreements were repeatedly raised as an issue by members of the public who responded to the government's consultation on how to better protect women and girls. Yeah, fine. That's okay. Why the hell are we banning wolf whistling in the same bloody piece of legislation? And we've gone through the rest of the legislation in Priti Patel's own comment section. And as I say, apart from the thing about wolf whistling, which is obviously absolutely ridiculous, and aside from the fact that most of these laws are probably going to be implemented really, really poorly, it's pretty much everything that they demanded from the Sarah Everard case, and yet this is still not good enough for some people. Here's what Jess Phillips had to say on it.
Why is it that in the city centre, every city centre or town centre, there is people patrolling the streets, stopping people parking poorly, but not patrolling the streets, making sure that women aren't being harassed in the street?
It's a really good question.
It's not working. It's just simply not working.
Oh, because successive Labour and Conservative governments have constantly seen a fall in policemen that are actually on the streets, whose job it is to do that. Because they'd rather pay for the parking patrol officers because it gets them a better income rather than put actual bobbies on the beat because they don't bring an income. All they do is go around and doing exactly what you're saying, stopping criminals, assuming you are referring to criminals, Jess.
And the idea that putting a police chief lead, one of the main problems with this strategy, of course, is that it puts aside domestic abuse is not part of this strategy, which fundamentally is, I'm afraid to say, a terrible error.
Well, the whole thing wasn't about domestic abuse. The whole thing was about harassment in the streets. Sarah Everard got killed or she was at least abducted on the streets. That's why domestic abuse isn't part of it, Jess. And if domestic abuse is still a problem, fine. You keep lobbying for that as you have done for decades.
Because these things are all connected.
I do not believe that coming from your mouth. If anyone actually knows stats on this, how many people are domestic abusers and also harass women in the streets, you know, genuinely harass them rather than just wolf whistling? I do not count wolf whistling as harassment. And if you do, you are a moron.
And we have a police chief lead for domestic abuse, and still conviction is falling, charging is falling, and cases are rising.
Yes, Jess, just because cases are rising, all that means is that a case has been reported. But that might also mean that most of these cases are negatives. You don't actually have any evidence there to suggest that less is being done about domestic abuse. Because I don't know why this is so hard to believe, but some people do lie, and some people do actually try and use the justice system to get back at people. But just saying, right, cases are going up but convictions and charges are going down, that doesn't necessarily mean that less is being done about it. This partly could be because women are so encouraged to go to the police when anything bad happens to them that, yeah, they'll go to them if they have an argument with their husband, maybe, and say that it was domestic abuse. Well, and then that gets turned into a case, but then, oh, it was just an argument, so nothing happened, so the case is dropped with no charges. Now, I'm obviously not saying that that happens in every case. There might be some cases where something terrible genuinely has happened and no charge has been made. But I'm saying that Jess Phillips can't necessarily say that that is happening and make that assumption. but she does anyway.
So whilst I want to see a new chief lead in violence against women and girls, I've got to say, without it coming with more than just, we're really hopeful that local councils will do this through guidance, it's just simply not good enough.
Yep, not good enough. Priti Patel, it's never going to be good enough. If I were you, I'd completely ignore Jess Phillips, because you can do everything she demands. You can give her that inch, and then she will take the mile, and then have a bitch fit at you because you didn't let her take two. Anyway, there is still that thing in the back of my head of why the hell did Priti Patel talk about abuse online? Well, I finally found an article on it. So, aiding self-harm online to be a crime. So basically, if you tell someone to kill themselves online, it could now be a crime. If iDubbbz was English, he would be sweating his tits off. So, encouraging self-harm online will be criminalised, and people convicted of cyberflashing will be forced to sign the sex offenders register under proposals being put to ministers. In a report published today, the Law Commission said it wanted to address the harms arising from online abuse by tightening laws on cyber behaviour. Commissioners said that existing legislation was ineffective at criminalising genuinely harmful behaviour, but in some instances disproportionately interferes with freedom of expression. Holy crap, this is actually a white pill. This sounds directly like they might be addressing Section 127 of the 2008 Communications Act. The part that says grossly offensive speech online must be punished by law, as Count Dankula was. So, there was too much reliance on vague terms such as grossly offensive and indecent. Yes! Which set the threshold for criminality too low and potentially criminalises some forms of expression that ought to be protected. Yes, yes, yes! Consensual sexting between adults could be indecent but was not worthy of criminalisation. But joining pile on harassment, where groups gang up on an individual on social media, can be harmful and distressing, and was not adequately criminalised. So yeah, good. They seem to be moving away from punishing Count Dankulas of the world for making jokes online, and seem to be going after the type of people that says J.K. Rowling deserves a pipe bomb in the mailbox. I didn't expect this white pill. This is really good. This is what I've been waiting for years. The authors point to significant gaps in the law on cyberflashing, sending unsolicited obscene pictures, dick pics, and encouraging serious self-harm. Yeah, I mean, I'm mostly fine with that. The issue with encouraging serious self-harm is that, obviously, as they kind of have the nuance before where they say, well, sexting between consenting adults, you know, that is fine. That can be seen as indecent, though. But the same can happen with encouraging self-harm, because obviously 90% of the time when people online say kill yourself, they don't mean it. You know, it's just trying to pick the worst thing you can say to someone, and so they say it for the shock value, basically. So I really hope they take that into account too, because obviously encouraging someone to genuinely kill themselves or to self-harm is obviously a really terrible thing to do, and should be criminalised, really. And the rest of the article goes into details of the issue with encouraging self-harm online, unironically, rather than just saying kill yourself, and the issue of cyberflashing, which is sending dick pics unsolicited, essentially. Which, from what I know of women on dating apps, that actually seems a lot worse for kind of women in their 30s. And honestly, with most messaging services essentially being end-to-end encrypted, it is quite easy to delete all the messages beforehand, so people could actually quite easily be framed for that. So again, I hope that's really something that comes into the nuance of putting these laws in, but really I don't have much issue with that. That was much a bigger white pill than I thought. Really, everything here was a lot better than I thought. I originally titled this video, the UK government has their priorities in the wrong places, but really, there's not too much going wrong here. The only thing I really hate is the wolf whistling. And of course, the misallocation of funds to the French to help our borders. But apart from that, it's been, yeah, fine. So, you know, if that's too white-pilled for you, don't worry, I'll end on a little black pill, and that is the young being absolute retards again. So young back vaccine check for nightclubs, because apparently the young turn into anti-fun. Most young people support compulsory vaccinations to enter nightclubs, polling suggested yesterday, despite staunch opposition from Tory MPs and some ministers. Some 57% of those aged between 18 and 25, woo go my generation, told the YouGov survey they supported the policy, which will see clubs in England require proof of double vaccination from their customers from the end of September. Now, I do just want to go through this again, because I really think it's going to be a theme of my channel from now on, just to have a go at my own generation. And just to point out that the right wing really need to just accept that a lot of the positions we take on, say, lockdown, economics and things like that, They are deeply unpopular with the young, and that is an issue we kind of have to deal with when, quote unquote, the young start getting into office. And it's one we basically already have an issue with now, with some of the Labour MPs being of my generation and being completely and utterly stupid. The problem with the young is that they have basically been taught throughout their school and throughout university to be coddled. They need to be told exactly what to do at what time. I still remember when I first went to uni, and don't worry, I was part of this issue as well. But when we went to uni, one of the first tutorials, no one from the tutorial actually went into the room before the tutor arrived. And he basically just said, he literally said word for word, "Why don't you have any fucking initiative?" He was like that, don't worry. And he actually did encourage us to use the initiative, but the problem was that he was in his 60s and one of the older lot. And as uni progressed on, that take and that kind of attitude from the lecturers in general seemed to drop like a stone, to the point where the 2 weeks of independent summer work we were supposed to do, completely taken off the board. It was replaced by a completely supervised field study with tutors, which we already had just to introduce us to field work. But then from then on, field work was all on our own. But not since I left. So obviously, if the young are going to be given a choice of, look, you're going to be told that you're only going to go in a nightclub if you show papers to say that you have done what you are supposed to have done for the good of humanity, most of them are going to say yes. Liberty is not a virtue to them, and we basically have to make strong emotional arguments to make the point. Because for now, their intuition is telling them someone in authority has to mollycoddle them. It's true. It is unironically not just a cliche. That's why they all love socialism, because that's kind of what they understand it to be. But at the same time, if they're asked directly about free market involvement in things, they'll prefer free market involvement in things because they understand that is still someone in charge of it. But for some reason, they just think centralised government is the way forward. And I don't get why. Because they constantly, and I mean constantly, protested the central government, the Tories, whatever in university. And yet they'd completely trust them with their life and their hate speech laws, despite the fact that they literally hate them. Every human is a walking contradiction, but my generation has to be the worst. But anyway, enough of that. That is everything I had for you today. More of a white pill than I expected, to be honest, but still some black pills thrown in there for a bit of spice. So, as usual, thank you very much for watching, and until next time, goodbye.